Well, hey, what do you know? The Democrats are talking about something that I'm totally interested in. They're releasing information regarding a project that's been in the works for longer than they're talking about in the Congress. Let me share with you. They're talking now about MK Ultra as a project and how it's affected people. Let's get into it.
Force on declassification of federal secrets will come to order. Welcome, everyone. Without objection, the chair may declare a recess at any time. I recognize myself for the purpose of making an opening statement.
Go for it.
This hearing is about the crimes committed by the Central Intelligence Agency against the American citizens and the decades of secrecy used to conceal them. The American people deserve a complete and truthful record.
Totally agree, people.
Victims
You
and their
absolutely
families
need
deserve
to tell these
acknowledgement,
people what's been
and
happening.
this Congress has a constitutional obligation to ensure that full declassification is not delayed any longer. Project MKUltra was not a policy failure or an overzealous program that got out of hand. It was a deliberate, systematic governmental operation that subjected American citizens, prisoners, hospital patients, veterans, ordinary people to LSD, electroshock, hypnosis, sensory deprivation, psychological torture without their knowledge or consent.
Now, what did I tell y'all about conditioned responses? Positionally divided, conditioned responses to political and socioeconomic aggregation. You
This went on for 20 years on American soil.
They say it went on for 20 years. That's an understatement. I want to just go back in time with y'all for a minute. Back when I was like 8 to 9 years old, I was still in my grade school, and we were being taught about how to use the internet. At the time, it was pure dial-up or pure intranet. At this time, you had access on the open free fly to what was initially the original function of a Tor browser, the Onion folder system. And the Onion URL system was eventually disbanded. Here's why. Because kids could in fact look up what the hell is MK Ultra, and we could find out. See, back in the day, the darknet had a lot more information, and nowadays it's viewed as evil only because it's got such a bad rep, okay? But here's the facts, is that back down in that pipe, there used to be a lot of information regarding topics like the MK Ultra projects and other projects in there, such as Infrared Judgment Project was a side project of MK Ultra. That's supposed to be like, they talked about it, Anonymous talked about this years ago, and I only thought it was a joke. I now know it isn't. And I don't think it ever really was a joke. I think it was a genuine fear of the people. Because back in the 90s, everybody wanted to be Hacker Man. It was so Giga Chad to be Hacker Man that everybody was basically Hacker Man, okay? So after that, the internet slowly stabilized and started creating the mainnet. After the mainnet was created, they started censoring everything on the deepnet. You cannot find an outlet on the Onion browser anymore that isn't completely and entirely inter-respondent to the CIA on the darknet. And there is a reason why. There was a lot of hacktivist and hacker crime that happened on the internet back then. The biggest focus they liked to complain about was piracy. In fact, the information on the darknet was strategically and procedurally removed because back then you could just Onion browser the information to what they're talking about 30 years later from those days.
Funded by American taxpayer dollars and authorized by the very top of U.S. intelligence apparatus. And this program, when it did end, the men who ran it did not cooperate with investigators. They did not come forward. They committed another crime. They destroyed evidence.
Yeah, that's not only the only thing they did. They also tried to hide it away. Like, it was initially in the full-blown, it wasn't even complete detail, but the details we had featuring MK Ultra and its underling projects was pretty elaborate, to say the least. So I know of a few things to do with MK Ultra as a warning response. First of all, MK Ultra is also, they're going to talk about this, it's mind control. It is strategic. It's the same things that they use in torture sequences like waterlogging and stuff like that, but instead done with their neuroelectrical stuff, like electroshock therapy. That was the first instance of this. You know how your phone rings and you can like put electromagnetic chore next to it, the chore sponge, and it'll like fry the sponge if it rings? Yeah, that's what happens to your brain. It would, at some point, she's going to talk about how it would have happened so seamlessly that no one would ever know it was happening. Well, your phone shocks your brain as a form of conditioning whenever it rings because of radiation from the phone's radio waves. There's an MKUltra project, and I know no one's going to want to admit that because it's spilled over into the public, and she also talks about that.
The documents this task force has reviewed are unambiguous. In January 1973, the director of the CIA, Richard Helms,
1973 was the starting initial precipice of this. In fact, before that was a more predominant mention that I'll mention in another video as well with more detail. But have you ever heard of the Lewis Powell memo? He was a judge back in 1972 who wrote the entire blueprint for whatever the political war pigs of, the Republican Party are doing right now to the people, because that's what they do. They just kind of hurt people and they don't care. The Democrats really do care about you. I know you don't want to hear that right now because it's politically popular to hate the Dems, but this is kind of obvious to me that we should trust a little bit in what she has to say. So listen, motherfucker, and listen to what another motherfucker has to say, shall we?
Prepared to leave office, he personally ordered the destruction of MKUltra records. The CIA official document in writing states, over my stated objectives, the MKUltra files were destroyed by the order of DCI Mr. Helms shortly before his departure from office.
Internet, this is where you need to listen to me, even though I'm basically no one on the internet. Scrutinize that claim. I know I'm talking about a Democrat here. I don't care. Scrutinize the claim of the data being destroyed. Some of it has. The entire dark web has been purged of the information that once was available to the public about this. That's one part of it being destroyed, but instead it wasn't destroyed. It was removed and documentarily isolated. It was put away. I don't think it was destroyed, and if it was destroyed, it wasn't all destroyed. There was way too much data collected from MKUltra, I believe, to even considerably be a problem for them to delete in one day.
A separate internal account confirms that Helms telephoned Dr. Gottlieb directly and instructed him to destroy, quote, all files pertaining to drug research and associated activities.
That means that basically anything to do with Infrared Judgment Project may be a complete farce to even try to find. But if you can scrutinize the hell out of this internet, you may be able to find some information that you would scare the public with. Okay? I just want to point out, this woman at some point in this video will gulp because of what she's reading. She's terrified to even read this. I honestly, anybody should be terrified of MKUltra because it would happen to you and you'd never know that it happened to you. That's the point of MKUltra.
Gottlieb compiled 4 people, spent an entire day tearing, burning down 152 files.
That can't be all the
Then
files.
Gottlieb had his personal papers destroyed by his secretary before he retired. The head of the CIA-owned records center protested the destruction in writing, but he was overruled. That is
152 files. That can't be all of the information.
obstruction of justice. That is criminal destruction of federal records, and neither individuals were ever charged with a crime for it.
Did you hear how she mentioned that the Department of Justice ordered the destruction of that? Now, who appointed the DOJ? Oh, yeah, that was Donald Trump. Put him behind bars.
Helms received a $2,000 fine for lying to Congress about an unrelated matter and collected his government pension until he died. Gottlieb retired in rural Virginia and wrote poetry. No one went to prison. No victim was ever formally compensated by the government for the harm that they caused. By 1975, the Church Committee and the Rockefeller Commission had already established through sworn testimony and the surviving 1963 Inspector General report that MKUltra existed and that the CIA had run a program of human experimentation on unwitting Americans.
That's only a small fry in the shit MKUltra used to do, according to stories.
Scope and detail of what we know today is largely because of an accident.
They say it's an accident. In fact, what it is they've discovered the problem, and now they're trying to solve a way on how to ramify the issue of the public because of socio-values and socioeconomic standing between the people versus the governing forces.
In 1977, an archivist diligently complying with a FOIA request discovered 7 boxes of MKUltra financial records that had been misfiled and escaped the bonfire. Those 7 boxes included the names of institutions, the name of subprojects, the researchers who participated, the specific operation that the CIA had funded, and without them, the vast majority of MKUltra would only be a rumor, just as Helms and Gottlieb intended.
Do you see what I mean when she gulped? She's terrified about this because even she could be a victim of this and she'd never know. That's the whole premise of MKUltra. Mind control without your inherent free will. That was the whole premise. They wanted to use binaural systems to control you and implant in your brain with information to follow out a task when activated. That's MKUltra. And if you are a victim of MKUltra or any of its underling projects, such as Infrared Judgment, which is the 5th, you should really be careful because a lot of people don't know about this. And the only reason I know anything of this in the first place, I'm again going to state this. I believe I've said this before. I'm going to say it again. I was 8 years old and just kind of Googling around or stumbling around on a web browser that was the only web browser in my school at the time. And they didn't have tracking able stuff at that time, not until I was in like 7th or 8th grade junior high. This would have been like 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade information, okay, that we were being taught how to use because back in our days, I'm a digital native. We were in schools instructed on how to use all aspects of the internet, probably in an event for something like, oh, I don't know, this. And back then, I ended up digging into information on the deep net that would probably scare the shit out of people. And thus, over the years, it has been systematically and strategically purged from the deep net. You can't go on a Tor browser or an Onion browser now and expect to find anything. Nothing exists down there but CIA and their little traps. That's about it. That's probably one of many potential problems with MKUltra is you may not be able to find the information I'm talking about anymore, but if you can, you should definitely scrutinize the hell out of the internet right now, especially this information coming from Congress, because it's possible it still does in fact exist, even if they said they destroyed it. These people are too bureaucratic to ever destroy that kind of information. Yes, it's highly sensitive. If the people ever knew, who would ever forgive the government, right? Well, I mean, look, after Epstein Island and the Donald Trump scandals and the manipulation and all this other stuff, and now we're learning about MKUltra and all its side hustles. When I was 8 years old, this was only an idea in my mind because my parents knew about it before I did. My parents are from the 60s, thank God. So they knew about this. And they were afraid of it, and they never really got into much detail about it. And then eventually I looked into it. That's how I know anything about this. But also, I wish she would have talked a bit about the pseudo projects of MKUltra, such as like the Project Infrared Judgment. That's a very religious thing. It's supposed to be the thing that forces everybody back into Christianity because it's supposed to put the sound of God in your mind. I don't have that issue. But I know that can, in fact, exist because there are plenty of activists on the internet who used to talk about this being a problem someday without completely referencing MKUltra. May I remind you, MKUltra is the most diabolical scheme that our country has ever come up with in the 70s. They say it lasted 10 years. It lasted like 30 to 40 years.
Those 7 boxes revealed that MKUltra comprised at least 149 subprojects, operated across more than 80 institutions, and involved 185 non-government researchers.
I'm not
They
involved.
revealed that the CIA covertly contributed $375,000 to a hospital research wing, which was approved directly by DCI Alan Dulles, which Richard Helms concurrence, so the agency could use unwitting patients as experimental subjects in what their own documents called a hospital safe house. The CIA's Inspector General said in 1963 his classified report concluded that the program had exceeded the agency's legal chapter, and covert testing on unwitting subjects placed the rights and interests of U.S. citizens in jeopardy.
This means that it's spilled over into the public. So that means that PSYOPs in public could be anything like YouTube. Which brings me to the next question for this lady. How many of the MKUltra project holders and actives are or were involved with this platform, YouTube? I'd like to know that, because that would give me way more advance on how I can fight back and how I can protect myself. Dear Democrats, I think the people deserve to know how to do so.
The program ran for a decade that we know of, and they ignored their own watchdog. Let me be clear what I believe that we are dealing with here. Administering drugs to people without their knowledge or consent, subjecting humans to psychological torture, and using prisoners and hospital patients as non-consenting research subjects. These are crimes against humanity.
Yep.
The Central Intelligence Agency committed them, and then the director of the CIA was ordering the destruction of evidence. Today, we will hear from two witnesses who have spent years unraveling the cover-up that our government ordered. Stephen Kinzer documented the life and crimes of Sidney Gottlieb in his book, Prisoner of Chief, and Tom O'Neill spent over 20 years investigating what the CIA buried and what they obscured.
Look at these people. Hold on. Look at these people. They all have no clue, or they all know and they don't care. This is the effect of MKUltra. They're just looking around like, nah, this isn't important. This is old news. This isn't, nah. This is crucial, critical information. And ain't not one of them, not even the three front heads, Gnixie, O'Neill, or Kinzer, not one of them can look at that with firm affirmation and sit there and say, this is fucked up.
In my mind, constitute some of the worst notorious crimes against humanity in the 20th century. Their
Probably adequate, too.
in the research in this hearing is possible simply because they are patriots. The American people deserve the complete record. The victims and their families deserve acknowledgement, accountability, and justice. And this Congress has a constitutional obligation to make sure that the CIA never does this again.
The best action of making sure the CIA can never do this again that you could ever do, Democrats, I'm just going to let you know as like an information source. Yeah, take it off the internet. Like, get the whole dark net back to function. Yes, keep crime off it, I suppose, but you can't really regulate that part of the net, you know? It's a bunch of nodes, you know? Bring back the dark net, keep CIA and all its garbage and Gestapo crap off the fucking net. The people, if we want to know things, we have every right just as much to the freedom of speech to fucking know, you know? Not that we're nosy, more that we've read things and we're scared. We want to know whether we're safe or not. And in this country, it's very hard right now to even determine whether anyone's safe at all.
With that, I'm going to be opening up first questions, and I'll hold my questions to the end to Representative Burleson. But before I do pass it, I did want to just note, a few weeks ago, we did receive reports. There was some back and forth regarding the CIA and ODNI pertaining to new MKUltra boxes that were discovered.
Oh, so there's more information. I told you there's more information.
Did go down to Langley. We did meet with the CIA, and the CIA is currently in the process of declassifying newly found documentation.
They're gonna do the same thing they did with the Epstein files. They're gonna blank cover it and try to cover it up.
Pertain specifically to a forgery program that was being housed under MKUltra. So
they're gonna try to redact as much information as possible.
We will be putting out notification with your help to
Not
also
the
comb
Dems,
through
the
some of the newly
Republicans.
released documents. But I
They're
did
the
want to give
people
you a
who
quick
would have
update.
every access to militant
Without further
forces
ado,
and
I would
CIA
like
access,
to
stuff like that, because they inhabit it.
I would like
That's their
to
whole-
now
that's their whole
recognize
party.
Representative Eric Burleson for his questions. Go ahead. Without objection, Representative Perry.
The man she called on didn't even want to touch that. I want to. Dear Democrats, I would love to do a deep dive on that. Give me all the information. I'll tell everyone exactly where they all been lied to. I'll show them all the truth. I don't have to be elected to know what to do the right thing is. This is ridiculous. Now it's MKUltra. I could have told you this was going to be a thing, but I didn't want to because I felt that if I had said something with my face, my pretty face being on the internet before the right time, that telling you about some of the things I know about because of my experience on the past of what used to be the darknet or the internet, the things people say, oh, it's not real. The red ones are just a bunch of... They didn't used to be. And I know that. I know what used to go on down there. And it was awful. Bad. Like evil shit. Okay? On the darknet, you could also find a lot of helpful people who wanted to give you the best of information sourcing, as long as it didn't get them in trouble. Which means the information would not be complete, but the information you would get would be substantial. Okay? Before then, back then, you didn't have crypto coins. You couldn't just trade a cryptocurrency for information. You had to go through back pathways. Okay? You had to go the back doors, not in the back rooms kind of thing, but like the back doors of the internet, the kind of areas of the internet that otherwise would be considered quite questionable. But if you know how to navigate and protect yourself, I used to wear a Guy Fawkes mask on the internet and sunglasses with a specific hoodie that you'll never find that hoodie ever again because it's no longer made. You know how I know? Because you'll never catch me in that identification profile picture ever again like that. You know how? Because it doesn't exist anymore. Yeah. The internet, as a large, is under exceptional threat. And here's the even worse part, is that it's coming from the same people who are doing it to you. That's the promise of MKUltra. And you'll never know it happened to you. Like she said, it will spill into society as it had, and it'll affect the public. That's what that meant. That's why I've been telling you about conditioned responses. It's funny, as soon as I talk about conditioned responses and in relation to a book series, instantaneously the next couple of days later, where the Democrats are out here talking about MKUltra. Yeah, I'm paying attention, dear Democrats. You've got my attention. Show me the way.